Welcome to Create Income with or without a job. I'm Jamila Harris, your Create Income coach. You will be thrilled to get the information to hear from our guest today. An extraordinary entrepreneur, Jessica Lewis, joins us. She is the CEO of Real Solutions for Real People. This interview is going to feature business startup advice. So, Jessica Lewis, we welcome you to Create Income with or without a job.
Thank you. I'm very appreciative to be here this morning. Thank you for having me.
When you shared your background with me, it was just what was so astonishing is some people are true entrepreneurs. And the entrepreneurial spirit is that we can definitely do more than one thing at a time.
For
And you
sure.
happen to be an entrepreneur that is a role model in terms of how to do multiple types of enterprises and keep multiple enterprises going at the same time. But I want you to start with your pre-entrepreneurial background and explain how you went from employee to entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Well, for starters, I was in human services for over 15 years, and something in me while working with the public, so any aspect of human services I did. So anywhere from being a corrections officer to a therapist to a director of programs, I've done it. And so during that time, there was something in me that kept saying, Jessica, you need to have your own business. You know how you may work for somebody and you feel like you can do it better than them? That's kind of always been my mindset, so to speak. And so when I had the opportunity to start my first business, I was 19 years old. I was 2 years into college, and my I gave somebody a gift and they said, Jessica, oh my gosh, this gift basket is so beautiful. You should go into business for yourself. So inside me, I already had that feeling like I was an entrepreneur, but I guess for me, I was scared to start, nevertheless, didn't know where to start. So when I let my auntie hype me up, I said, okay, Jessica, this is your chance. It's showtime. And so she told me that I should go into doing gift baskets. So my very first business, 19 years old, still in college, was Wicked Wicker Gift Baskets. And so I did gift baskets for corporate companies that would give the gifts to their clients to kind of smooze them, to get them to do business with them. And so that was my specialty. And then it went into everything else. So whether it was a baby shower or a special holiday, a little bit of everything. I was doing gifts for everybody. And so after a while, my ADD kicked in. I got a little bored with it. And so I said, you know what? Let's get over the gift basket thing. So I had stopped that. And so I ended up working for that 15-year period. And that's when I realized that working was not for me. And so I went from being a worker with a W-2 to being a 1099, thinking, Jessica, you're slowly easing your way into business, right? And so 1099s they're independent contractors. And so I did a lot of independent contract work, anywhere from insurance to other kind of sales positions. And so eventually, because my family did instill in me that you always should have a job and your business is your backup, not your primary. At some point in time, which was 2 years ago for me, I had this revelation where said, Jessica, you've been playing with this business thing, part time for a very long time. It's time for you to take a leap of faith. And what I will say is that was the best decision that I personally ever made. Having worked for someone else primarily for over 18 years, at some point in time, it said, this is time for you to do it for yourself. Again, I was trying to break a generational curse because my family always bought real estate. We always were developers. We did all kinds of stuff, but we always kept our jobs. We never let go of the 9 to 5. And so 2 years ago, I happily quit my job. I went on a 2-week vacation to Dubai and the Maldives. And I came back and I gave my 3 weeks notice because I did want to not burn my bridge. And so I did what I have to do to prepare whoever was coming in after me. I made sure my territory was straight. I made sure they had everything that they needed. And I was off to the races. And if I never made that decision, I honestly would not have been where I am today, being a very successful multipreneur, having multiple businesses, being able to thrive and grow in my purpose. And for me, my purpose was to be in business, but also help others do the same thing.
So, two things that I heard, and many of us have similar, basically psychological implants
Mhm.
that come from family lore, family mores, family stories, oral history, that you were left with that thought that, yeah, business is great, but you just better have that job. That's the anchor.
Mhm. That's
And
right.
the other thing I want to ask you to also just give us some more insight, detailed insight into, is how you actually moved from paycheck and even 1099 contract to solo, to an entrepreneur, because people don't often make the connection. People want to know how to do that. Some of us
Mhm.
in today's time have to do it by necessity because we've already lost our job. But for
Right.
someone who still has a job, what were those steps in moving from having a definite income to depending on your entrepreneurial income?
A few things. So, for starters, when you're working a wage job, you are on the clock all day. They pay you a certain amount, and sometimes you may even be salaried. Salary meaning they can have you pushing overtime and you're not getting paid extra for it, right? And so, again, in your mind, you have to understand, is this what you really want? And so, it starts in the mind with the mindset, and then you can start making the movements. So when I was a W-2 employee, I had jobs where overtime was there, meaning I can make extra with overtime. And then I moved to positions that were salaried, where I never would get overtime. Salary meaning you work all day, every day, you don't get paid any extra. So I started from there. Then I moved to the jobs that allow for me to have overtime. And then I moved to into independent contracting. And so what that looks like is you go from still working for somebody else, but on your own time. And so some industries may not allow for that. So if you're in that type of industry, I can't be very specific on the types that may not allow it, but most industries do have those opportunities where you can be an independent contractor for a company and not do the wage side of it, where they don't take out taxes. So keep that in mind. 1099, that's the beginning of you being an entrepreneur. So you have to file your own taxes. You do have to keep up with all those expenses. And so I would suggest that someone goes from figuring out if your industry allows for that. There are human service jobs that do that. So I was a TSS worker, where I work one to one with children who had mental and developmental delay issues. I also was a therapist where I made my own hours as a counselor. So there were so many types of jobs in my industry that I could move from that allowed for me that flexibility of being able to make my own hours and also being able to make as much money as I wanted. And so when I transitioned from an independent contractor to a full-time entrepreneur, that was a whole different game, because the year before I left, I gave myself a year goal. And so within that year, I started transferring my energy from being a full-time employee to a partially full-time entrepreneur. So the first 6 months, I replaced my income that I was making at my job. And then my second 6 months, I made it my business to continually maintain that income. And so why that's so important is because everybody think they could be an entrepreneur. You can be, but you do have to plan it out a little bit. I also made sure that I didn't take a day off that entire year. I also made sure that I upped my 401k, because at the time my job was giving me 6% match. And so I took out $400 every single check, and not everybody can afford to do that, but I did that, $400 per check. So when I left, I had almost 40,000 in my 401k, because I had already been doing my contributions prior to my year. I just upped it from 200 to 400 in my last year. And then with the 6% contribution, that made a really big difference. And long story short, when you become an entrepreneur, the transition is going to be from your mindset to the actual actions. And so I was more of my own business my last year of working at my job, meaning I was doing bare minimal just so I couldn't get fired. I'm just being honest, guys. Just so I didn't get fired, but I put more energy in my business, because that's the shift that you have to make. If you don't make that shift, unfortunately, you'll never make it to that point.
Excellent. That's an excellent how-to, a picture, a visual of the actual steps you have just mentioned.